beautiful downtown Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. Don't forget, 12 years ago, our ancestors brought forth upon this continent one nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all people are created equal. Today we are going to go back in time to think about what that founding generation meant. What were some of the ideas that were going around as this nation began? We have tonight Kathleen Hauser and Susan Guinter with Women of the Revolution.
Ladies and gentlemen, I bid you good evening. I am Abigail Adams of Massachusetts, born Abigail Smith in the year 1744 in the small town of Weymouth. I am the daughter of a minister, the wife of a patriot, and the mother of a future president. But I would have you know me, not solely by these relations, but by my own words, my own thoughts, and the life I have lived in a most extraordinary age. I was not educated in a formal school, as most boys were, for it was not the custom to trouble girls with such ambitions. Yet I assure you my mind was no less eager. I read what books I could find, I listened closely, and I asked questions, sometimes more than was thought proper. Well, in this manner, I fashioned for myself an education, one based not only on words, but on observation, reflection, and a deep curiosity about the world beyond my home. Why, in my youth, I could never have imagined the trials that were to come, the unrest, the war, the separation from those I loved most dearly. When I married John Adams, I knew him to be a man of strong convictions, and I soon learned that those convictions would carry him far from home. He served in Congress, he traveled abroad, and he traveled and labored tirelessly for the cause of independence. And I, like so many women of my time, remained behind. But do not mistake my meaning. To remain behind did not mean to remain idle. When my husband was helping to shape a nation, I was charged with the preservation of a home. I managed our farm in Braintree. I oversaw the planting and the harvest. I bartered goods when supplies ran scarce. I made decisions that would determine whether our family endured or failed. And all this I did while raising our children and striving to instill into them the virtues of diligence, integrity, and love of country. Those were not easy years. War brings with it uncertainty and fear. Why, there were shortages of goods, threats of violence, and the constant anxiety of never knowing what the next day would bring. Oh, I remember the sounds of cannon fire in the distance. I remember the rumors that spread like wildfire throughout our communities. And I remember the weight of responsibility on me when there was no one else to bear it. But even in such moments, I did not consider myself to be powerless. No, for though I could not stand in the halls of Congress, I could still make my thoughts known. My husband and I wrote to one another often. And those letters carried not just news of home and family, but discussions of politics, philosophy, and the future of our new nation. In those letters, I spoke plainly. I questioned, I advised, I urged. You may have heard of one such appeal when I asked my husband and the gentleman who labored with him to remember the ladies when forming new laws. I cautioned that if women were not granted greater consideration and protection, we might not be so eager to submit to laws in which we had no voice. It was a bold statement, I admit, but though my words did not bring about immediate change, still I do not regret them, because every idea must first be spoken before it takes root. I believed then, as I believe now, that liberty must be more than just a word to be proclaimed. It must be a principle to be applied, and it must extend in time to all people. In those years, I bore witness to contradictions. We spoke of freedom while so many remained enslaved. We declared rights that were not yet shared by all. These were truths not easily reconciled, and I wrestled with them, as I suspect some of you may still do in your own time. But I have learned that a nation, like a person, is not to be judged solely by its beginnings, but by its willingness to grow, to question itself, and to strive for something better. When the war was finally over and independence was secured, our challenges did not simply disappear. Peace brought with it its own uncertainties. Why, there was a government to be built, a people to be united, trust to be earned. In time, I would travel to Europe to join my husband in his diplomatic service. There, I saw other nations, their customs, their courts, their ways of government. And I came to appreciate both the promise and the fragility of what we had begun in America. Later still, I would reside in the nation's capital as the wife of the president. I found myself in a role few women had ever occupied, navigating expectations that were undefined and responsibilities that were ever-changing. Yet even in such a position, I remained what I had always been, thoughtful, watchful, and willing to speak my mind. I tell you, it was hard, those years. It really was. So, as I share my story with you tonight, I wish for you to consider your own role in the unfolding story of your own time. Do you speak when something needs to be said? Do you act when something needs to be done? Do you hold fast to your principles, even when it is inconvenient or even dangerous to do so? These are not questions for statesmen alone. They are questions for us all. If my life has any lesson, it is this, that courage need not be loud to be powerful, that influence need not be visible to be lasting, and that the pursuit of justice, however incomplete, must never be abandoned. I am Abigail Adams. I have lived in an age of great uncertainty and great hope. I have seen a people rise, a nation formed, and ideas put into motion that will long outlast those who first spoke them. And I leave you with this thought. Do not underestimate the power of a thoughtful mind, a steadfast heart, and a voice willing to be heard. For it is by these means that history is not only witnessed, but made.
friends of liberty, and seekers of history. I am Mercy Otis Warren, once a daughter of Massachusetts, a patriot, a writer, and a witness to the birth of a nation. I was educated, along with my brothers, by a private tutor, unusual for a female at that time. I received a classical education. It included mythology, Greek and Roman literature, ancient and contemporary history, ancient and contemporary philosophy, and composition. I learned to write, and my writing was my contribution to the revolution. I wrote poetry and dramatic works that often satirized British officers, which was not appreciated, and pamphlets and essays, all championing the revolution. I was instrumental in getting the Bill of Rights amended to the Constitution, and I wrote an extensive history of the American Revolution. As a historian, I believe that truth is among the greatest guardians of liberty. A nation that neglects the truth of its beginnings risks losing sight of the principles upon which it was founded. When we tell the story of our struggle for independence, it is told mostly through the deeds of statesmen, soldiers, generals. We hear the names Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Hamilton, Franklin, and their contributions were great, and history remembers them rightly. But countless women whose courage, intelligence, sacrifice, determination, and endurance sustained and advanced the revolution are often forgotten when we celebrate the beginnings of our country. Their contributions were a vital force that contributed to the success of the Revolutionary War. So allow me to tell you about some of these women. You already heard from my dear friend Abigail Adams. She had such a keen intellect and a sharp understanding of politics. Her wisdom informed and guided one of the revolution's most influential leaders. She also helped shape the political thought of a young nation, and she helped me personally clarify my political beliefs and principles. Another remarkable woman was Martha Washington. She was General Washington's wife and performed those duties admirably, but she did more than keep the home fires burning. Each winter, she traveled to the encampments to offer comfort and encouragement to soldiers worn down by war and cold and hunger. She helped raise funds, she organized supplies, and she visited the sick and the wounded. She reminded the soldiers of the homes and the family for which they fought. Officers often commented on how the soldiers' morale was lifted after her visits. She helped strengthen the spirit of the Continental Army during some of its darkest times. We also must honor Esther de Bert Reed. Her contribution was like no other. When the Continental Army suffered desperately from lack of supplies and soldiers hadn't been paid in many months or even years, Esther organized an amazing fundraising effort among the women of Philadelphia. She wrote a broadside entitled "The Sentiments of an American Woman," urging women to support the revolutionary cause, to forego buying another frock or bonnet, and to use that money to donate to the soldiers. Well, the women responded enthusiastically. Esther organized them into groups, and they went door to door all over, collecting donations, mostly from other women, and raised thousands of dollars for the effort. It was suggested that the money be spent buying items for officers, but Esther disagreed. She wanted the soldiers to receive the money directly, to pay them for their service, and to encourage them to continue to serve. General Washington disagreed. He said the soldiers would just spend the money on rum. He wanted to use the funds for a bank from which the army could borrow. Esther disagreed. She was not afraid to argue with the commander. She did not want the funds donated and collected by women be put into a fund that is distributed by men. They argued back and forth for a while and finally compromised on buying linen and having the women sew much needed shirts for the army. So the women did. Many of them embroidered their initials in the collars of the shirts to let the soldiers know there was an individual woman in the colonies that cared about them and appreciated their service. A note on this: after everything had been distributed, the funds spent, the shirts made, a division of the army mutinied because they hadn't been paid in so long. But women don't know anything about military matters. Then there's Phyllis Wheatley. She was born in Africa and enslaved at the age of 7 and brought to America. She underwent circumstances that might have silenced any other person. She was educated by the Wheatley family and became a gifted poet. Her poems were published when she was still a teenager, and they were recognized and praised on both sides of the Atlantic. They influenced Europeans to support the American cause. Her poems were about liberty, virtue, human dignity. At a time when many doubted the intellectual abilities of women and of those of African descent, Phyllis shattered those prejudices with the power of her writing. She wrote a poem praising General Washington and was invited to meet with him in his quarters in Cambridge. Her achievements, they help us realize how the ideals of freedom inspired so many, even those that were denied freedom themselves. Another woman to honor is Lydia Durrah. Lydia lived in Philadelphia when it was occupied by the British. British officers, believing that no woman could possibly be interested in or understand military matters, often met at her home and talked freely in front of her. When she overheard them planning to mount a surprise attack on American forces, she left the city under the pretense of buying flour and undertook a dangerous journey behind British lines to reach the American officers and warn them of the British plans. She represents the many women whose homes were requisitioned and occupied by the British, who considered women no threat and often talked about military matters in their presence. They took advantage of being underestimated, and they gathered the valuable information and gave it to the British, or gave it to the American cause. Another woman who benefited from being considered no threat was only known as Agent 355. The number is a secret code used by the Culper spy ring, which was a network of intelligence agents gathering information for General Washington. A lot of the details of her life are hidden, but it's believed that she was a socialite who could move freely among British officers and loyalist circles, collecting information valuable to the Patriot cause. Imagine the danger she faced. While a soldier captured in battle could be exchanged as a prisoner of war, spies were hanged. Historians believe it was her information that helped expose the treason of Benedict Arnold and his plot, together with a British major, to secure the fort at West Point for the British. Agent 355 stands as a symbol for many women who operated as spies and risked their lives to get much-needed information to the Army. A woman whose name has become legendary is Mary Ludwig Hayes, who is better known as Molly Pitcher. During the Battle of Monmouth, Molly carried water to thirsty soldiers in the blazing summer sun. The water was needed not only for drinking, but also to cool overheated cannons. When her husband collapsed near his artillery position, Molly reportedly stepped up and operated the cannon on her own. She represents the many women who followed the Continental Army and provided much-needed services. They procured and carried supplies, they cooked, they washed clothing and repaired it, they tended to the sick and the wounded. They underwent many of the hardships that the Army did and often found themselves under fire. Without them, the Continental Army would not have succeeded. And then there's Deborah Sampson. She was determined to serve directly, so she disguised herself as a man and enlisted in the Continental Army. For over a year, she concealed her identity, underwent many of the hardships and dangers that the Army did, and fought in combat. She was wounded and treated herself rather than risk discovery. She was eventually discovered, and she was given an honorable discharge. And when the war was over, she received a small pension for her service. She was not the only woman who took up arms against the British. Some fought in the Army next to their husbands. Some mounted an armed defense of their homes and their lands. And some harassed the British Army along lonesome frontier roads. Another woman to honor is Sybil Luddington. When the British were advancing and threatening her community in New York, 16-year-old Sybil rode all night to warn the militia of what the British were up to. The journey took her across many miles of rough road and through dangerous territory. At the end of it, the militia were warned and ready to meet the threat. Another woman is Emily Geiger. She was given a very important message for General Nathaniel Greene. She undertook a perilous journey behind enemy lines and was captured by the British. Realizing that if the British found the message she carried, she would probably be killed and General Greene's forces would be in grave danger, so she took the message and she ate it. The British found nothing, so they let her go. She continued on her journey, met with General Greene, and delivered the message verbatim that she had memorized. There are many women whose stories we don't know, who were lost to history. But when we look at the women we know about, we see different talents, different circumstances, but they shared a common purpose. They did not seek fame or expect statues or their names on monuments. They simply believed that freedom was worth the risk, worth the sacrifice. The revolution was not won solely by those whose signatures are on documents or who are commemorated in parks with statues, or whose portraits hang in grand halls. It was also won by ordinary people performing extraordinary acts. History not just a record of events, it's a record of people. Their stories are important, not just the women, but also the enslaved, the Native Americans, and all the others who history has ignored or forgotten. Each voice not heard weakens our understanding of the whole. It is only through an accurate account can future generations appreciate the sacrifices made to secure their freedoms or learn the virtues needed to preserve them. When we tell the whole story, we do justice not only to the past, but to the future as well. Thank you. Now we'll visit the past. It is spring of 1775. I'm at my home in Barnstable, Massachusetts, and awaiting a visit from my neighbor, Mrs. Whitfield.
Mrs. Warren, I thank you for receiving me, though I suspect my opinions may be less welcome than my presence.
A free people must tolerate disagreement, Mrs. Whitfield, else we're no better than tyrants ourselves. Sit. The tea may cool while the politics burn.
Oh, politics have already burned enough. Boston suffers, commerce is strangled, families divide against one another. And yet your patriots press onward as though rebellion were a virtue.
Well, not rebellion for its own sake, resistance to opposition, resistance to oppression. There's a distinction history remembers too late.
Oppression? You speak as though His Majesty were a despot. England has protected these colonies for generations. British soldiers defended us in the French War, and British ships guard our coasts still.
And for that protection, we have paid dearly. In taxes, in trade restrictions, in obedience demanded without representation. We are treated as subjects to be managed and not English citizens possessing rights.
Every subject of the crown does not vote in Parliament, yet all remain loyal Englishmen.
Parliament claims power unlimited over a people 3,000 miles away. If such authority is accepted, what liberty is secure?
Liberty. I sometimes fear that Americans now mistake liberty for license. Crowds tar officials in the streets. Men threaten neighbors who will not denounce the king. Is this your noble freedom?
No revolution arrives unstained by passion and violence. I do not defend every reckless act, but shall occasional disorder excuse permanent submission?
Submission. You use the language of slaves, yet you live comfortably in one of the freest empires on earth.
Freest empires still desire power. Even a mild master may turn severe when obedience is questioned.
And what shall independence bring? Peace? Prosperity? No, Mrs. Warren, it shall bring war, widows, burned towns, hunger. England's might cannot be overcome by angry farmers.
Well, perhaps not, but there's a moment when a people must decide whether safety is worth the surrender of principle.
Easy principles spoken from warm parlors.
Oh, do not mistake me. I know the cost. My own husband endangers himself because he speaks freely. Friends vanish into suspicion. Every letter may be read by hostile eyes. Oh, I understand danger.
Well, then why continue? Why urge ordinary people toward ruin?
Because tyranny grows when good people silence themselves.
Tyranny, always that word. What tyranny has touched you personally?
The closing of Boston Port, troops quartered among the civilians, laws enacted without consent, assemblies dissolved when they protest. What name should I give such acts?
Necessary discipline against unrest.
Spoken exactly as every government speaks before liberty disappears.
And spoken by patriots as every rebellion begins. I confess something plainly, Mrs. Warren. I fear the common people. Once roused into anger, they cannot be controlled. Today they may condemn taxes. Tomorrow they may condemn churches, property, even gentlemen themselves.
Well, your fears are not unreasonable, but shall fear alone determine the future of a nation?
Oh, fear preserves civilization. Without order, mobs rule.
Without liberty, kings rule absolutely.
Not absolutely. England has laws.
Laws may either shield freedom or suffocate it.
And you believe these colonies wiser than centuries of British government?
I believe that no distant power can understand a people as well as the people themselves can.
You speak with confidence uncommon in women.
Well, perhaps because women are expected to suffer policy and keep silent about it.
Politics are harsh business.
Yet their consequences reach every hearth. When war comes, and I believe it has already started, it is women who bury sons, who preserve homes, who stretch scarce food, who endure absence. Why should we not speak?
I do not say women lack intelligence, but disorder threatens us especially. If this rebellion should fail, all associated with it may lose everything.
Well, then let us hope justice succeeds.
Justice, according to whom?
According to natural law. Natural rights bestowed not by kings, but by the Creator.
Such language grows fashionable among your patriots.
Because it's true.
Truth becomes dangerous when every man claims heaven favors his cause.
And equally dangerous when rulers claim divine permission to rule without restraint.
Suppose independence is won. What then? 13 colonies quarreling like jealous sisters? Merchants refusing cooperation? States competing against states? England's government may be imperfect, but it is stable.
Stability purchased through injustice cannot last forever.
Nor can nations survive constant agitation.
Mrs. Whitfield, do you know what bothers me most?
No, what is that?
Well, those loyal in Britain are not wicked people. They are thoughtful, educated, moral, yet they expect a Americans to endure quietly what they themselves would protest if done closer to home.
It troubles me that many patriots are honorable too, and yet they rush toward a precipice, believing that Providence shall catch them before they fall.
Well, perhaps Providence favors courage.
Perhaps Providence punishes pride.
When I was younger, I believed that conflict could always be settled by reason. Petitions, appeals, debate. Yet Parliament answered petitions with punishment.
Because Boston destroyed tea and defied authority.
Tea was never the issue.
No. Power is the issue. Patriots wish to govern themselves entirely.
Yes. At last, we arrive honestly at the heart of it.
Then say plainly what you seek.
A nation where laws arise from the consent of the governed, where liberty is protected from distant rulers, where citizens are not subjects.
You speak as though monarchy itself were evil.
I speak as one weary of asking permission to possess rights that are already ours.
And if thousands die to achieve this dream?
Thousands have died throughout history because free people hesitated too long.
You would gamble the future of every colony.
And you would surrender that future before the contest has even begun.
No, I would preserve peace.
Peace without dignity becomes submission.
Well, dignity without peace becomes tragedy. Do you truly believe that independence is inevitable?
Oh. I believe that the spirit awakening in these colonies cannot be easily extinguished now.
And God help us all.
Oh, indeed. Whatever happens, America will never be the same.
Nor England.
History is turning, Mrs. Whitfield. We just stand close enough to hear its gears.
And I fear those gears may crush us.
Perhaps. But future generations may call this the birth of liberty.
Or the birth of chaos.
History will judge.
If there are enough of us left to write it.
It is now July 28th, 1776. The Declaration of Independence has been published, printed, and distributed throughout the colonies, who aren't colonies anymore. They're states, part of a united independent confederation soon to be named the United States of America. Let's go to Barnstable again, to my home. Abigail Adams is visiting, and we are contemplating the challenges that might face the new nation. The people celebrate as though liberty has already been secured. And yet, Abigail, I fear the greater battle begins only now.
Indeed, declaring independence is but the opening act. Maintaining a free republic may prove far more difficult than resisting a king.
Oh, history gives little comfort in that matter. Nations often cast off one tyrant only to create another with their own hands.
And tyranny does not always wear a crown. Sometimes it arrives clothed in patriotism and public praise.
Oh, yes. Selfish, ambitious men are dangerous precisely because they speak so passionately about serving the people. A nation may fall to those claiming to defend it.
And the people themselves are not without fault. I mean, crowds governed by anger may become dangerous. Passion often overwhelms reason in unsettled times.
That concerns me greatly. I mean, liberty cannot survive if vengeance governs public judgment. Citizens may forego justice for the satisfaction of punishing their enemies.
I know. I have noticed how quickly rumors spread during this conflict. Entire towns become inflamed before the truth can catch up.
Yes, tavern talk and pamphlets stir passions powerfully. Falsehood travels more rapidly than reason, particularly when it reinforces existing fears.
Yes.
But freedom without discipline descends into chaos, and chaos invites tyranny in return. Frightened people may relinquish rights when promised protection.
I confess I sometimes wonder if Americans place too much trust in popular leaders. Like General Washington is honorable, but future commanders may not possess equal restraint. A standing army troubles me for that reason. Armies established for protection may someday become instruments of control, and citizens accustomed to military authority may gradually surrender civil liberties without recognizing it.
Yes. War itself changes the character of a people. Violence hardens tempers and encourages obedience rather than independent thought.
And then liberty requires restraint from both citizens and rulers alike.
Yes. Liberty.
That is how liberty disappears, you know.
Liberty is in danger when people are willing to trade freedom for comfort.
And the government is not the only danger. I fear division among the colonies themselves. We are united now against Britain, but what shall happen when the common enemy is gone?
Regional jealousies already simmer beneath the surface. I mean, northern merchants, southern planters, frontier settlers, each imagine the nation differently.
And men grow stubborn when wealth or interest is threatened. Commerce may divide Americans nearly as much as politics.
Yeah, a republic weakens when citizens view each other merely as rival factions competing for power.
Things just really cannot work if citizens cease valuing truth.
Oh. A free people cannot govern wisely if deception becomes common, or if men prefer comforting lies over difficult truths.
I sometimes wonder if future Americans shall become so consumed by political disputes that they forget their shared obligations to the Republic.
That danger is real. Political parties, should they become too powerful, may encourage citizens to value faction above country.
Imagine neighbors refusing friendship simply because they support opposing leaders.
No, our newspapers devoted not to informing the public, but to inflaming anger and resentment for profit or influence.
That would poison civic life entirely.
Exactly. Republics depend on disagreement tempered by mutual respect. When citizens start treating political opponents as enemies rather than countrymen, well, liberty is endangered.
Mob rule troubles me almost as much as monarchy. Crowds governed by anger may commit injustices that no king would dare to attempt openly.
People are capable of great wisdom, but also great cruelty when inflamed by fear or anger. Democracy requires self-control as well as freedom.
And education. An ignorant populace may be easily manipulated by ambitious men promising simple answers.
That is precisely why learning is so essential to Republican government. Citizens must have knowledge enough to recognize deception and virtue enough to resist corruption.
You know, women play no small role in that task, even though most men would dismiss us from political matters entirely.
Yet mothers shape the minds of future citizens. A republic cannot survive if women are denied education while expected to raise virtuous sons and daughters.
As you know, I have urged my husband to remember the ladies, but I suspect many men laugh at such appeals.
Well, they may laugh now, but contradictions cannot remain hidden forever. Men who condemn arbitrary power in kings while exercising it freely over women reveal the hypocrisy of their principles.
And slavery, that reveals an even darker contradiction. How may Americans declare universal liberty while so many thousands remain enslaved?
Oh, that is a profound moral failing. We will regret it. A nation founded upon freedom, yet dependent upon bondage, shows corruption within its very foundation.
Yet some argue the issue is too divisive to address during war.
Yet, postponing justice rarely strengthens a republic. Tyranny tolerated in one form enables tyranny elsewhere.
A people accustomed to dominating others may eventually grow careless with liberty altogether.
Yes. Habitual injustice damages both the oppressed and those exercising power.
Religious intolerance troubles me also. Certain colonies permit little freedom to dissenters, even though so many of our ancestors came to these shores to escape religious persecution.
Oh, that's unacceptable. Yet that's the nature of power. Men often defend liberty only for those who resemble themselves, who believe as they do. True freedom must include the right to individual conscience, the right to practice one's faith.
Do you think future Americans shall preserve these principles faithfully?
Well, some generations will strive earnestly to do so. Others may become complacent during prosperous times and forget how fragile republics truly are.
Prosperity itself may become dangerous. People devoted entirely to wealth seldom concern themselves greatly with virtue.
Well, commerce is useful, but greed corrupts public life. When profit becomes the highest national value, integrity is sacrificed.
And public service becomes self-interest disguised as patriotism.
Yes, public offices intended to advance the public good may become prizes sought by the ambitious and wealthy to enhance their image.
I already observe some men more eager for recognition than sacrifice.
No, vanity has undone many republics. Citizens begin to admire spectacle over wisdom and popularity over character.
So, the survival of liberty depends as much upon moral character as upon constitutions and laws.
More so. Laws alone can't preserve freedom if citizens become corrupt, selfish, or indifferent.
Do you think future Americans will somehow recognize this?
They don't understand the responsibility of a republic fully. Many imagine liberty means freedom from restraint alone, when in truth, it also demands duty, moderation, and participation in public life.
Without those principles, freedom may descend into disorder.
And disorder invites authoritarian rule.
So then, the greatest threat to the republic may not come from foreign enemies at all.
No, the gravest dangers usually emerge from within. Corruption, division, ignorance, intolerance, and unchecked ambition.
That is a sobering thought.
But not a hopeless one. I mean, the fact that republics are fragile does not mean that they are doomed. It means citizens must guard them constantly.
Right. Every generation shall face its own temptations toward tyranny.
And every generation must decide to choose truth over comfort, justice over convenience, and country over party.
Well, then our greatest task may not be simply gaining independence, but in teaching future generations how easily republics may perish.
Indeed. The Declaration of Independence was the beginning of an experiment, not its conclusion. America's survival depends upon its citizens remaining vigilant against every form of arbitrary power.
Even those forms arising among themselves.
Especially those. Distant kings are easier to recognize than corruption growing quietly within one's own nation.
So, the preservation of liberty requires constant examination of both government and character.
Exactly. Republics only endure when citizens have courage enough to resist tyranny and character enough to not become tyrants themselves.
Well, this revolution is not only about gaining independence from Britain. It is about building a more just society.
Thank you.